Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Welcome to episode number 3 of the Rolling Bad Podcast, coming to you from the Blue Sky Labs in the desolate wasteland of Albuquerque, New Mexico on July 11th. I'm your host, Bill Costello, and with me is...
Elric Edge.
And James Tapia.
So we're going to start right into today's show with the Realm of the New Dawn, talking about the new stuff that's coming out. Eric, you want to start us off?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get the 30K/40K stuff out of the way real quick. Because, to be quite honest, the last 2 weeks have been hot and heavy with releases for both games. And then we'll get to the Age of Sigmar deliciousness shortly. But they released the individual boxes for the Battle of Cal 30K sets. So you can buy your Contemptor Dreadnoughts and Cataphracti Terminators and all that stuff individually now. I don't necessarily know why you would, because just buying the Battle of Calth box is still a screaming hot deal compared to buying all the stuff individually. But maybe you're tired of getting 30 Marines a whack. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be that you just want to fill out your list, or a lot of people are buying the box set and splitting it between 2 people. So I don't know really why they separated it, but it's a good thing. It's not a bad deal.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people like to add a Cataphracti or a Contemptor Dreadnought to an existing Space Marine list.
Yeah.
You know, especially now that they can ride in the backs of Storm Ravens, which is pretty cool. But
And they get 4 attacks apiece now, too.
oh yeah, they increased the attacks of all Dreadnoughts by 2. So that's pretty tasty.
That's a huge deal. Except they still die on the way to you. So
So that's pretty cool. And then they also did the Storm Cloud attack boxes, all the flyers, which apparently is like a little separate game that you can play. You get 2 different flyers, one from 2 varying factions, and then you can play kind of like a dogfight type thing. But it's also a great deal to get semi-cheaper flyers.
Yeah.
If they're for armies that you already have, or you want to split them with a friend or something like that. So now, you know, the real meat and potatoes of it, the Age of Sigmar releases, which, holy cow. So,
boy, what a week.
Yeah, I guess let's go over what's already come out, which is Sylvaneth, what everybody's talking about. So we won't go into it too much, I don't think. But the models are incredible. The book is out, etc. If you want to really hear the juicy bits, you can listen to shows like Facehammer and whatnot that got advanced copies and did really in-depth reviews of everything that's in it, and talk tactics, potential tactics already for the army, as well as it's all over Twitter. I mean, it's Iron Jaws times 10.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody.
Well, it's everything
Sylvaneth.
that's come out so far times 10. I mean, that is an amazing faction.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're already sold out, right?
Yeah, so that's something that's really cool is they sold out on Iron Jaws, on everything but the Ard Boys, which was an old kit. They sold out even faster on Sylvaneth, which honestly is pretty amazing, because last I checked, Games Workshop was going out of business and being sold to Hasbro, and we were going to get pre-painted Space Marines in our Happy Meals, and you know, the sky was falling, and so obviously this can't be happening, right?
Right. Yeah, it's mythical.
So, yeah, but it's amazing that Age of Sigmar is just doing so well. And speaking of something else that sold out already, is the pre-order for the
Gore Chosen
box is already sold out.
And that made me sad, because I went on there right away to try to pick it up, and it's like sold out. What?
Yeah. Hopefully they'll reissue that.
Oh, they are.
I certainly plan on picking them up just for Silver Tower purposes.
Mm-hmm.
$60 for 4 guys is pretty good.
I kind of wonder if some of this selling out is them not creating enough to create demand for it, or if they really are producing a standard number of stuff and the stuff's just flying off. I don't, either way, I don't care, but it's crazy to see 2 straight releases sell out.
I don't know. I don't know if they anticipated the...
Yeah, it could be higher demand. I know we had some people in our group buy the Sylvaneth, Ryan and even Mead, who had sworn off GW.
Yeah.
And he's jumping back in. He saw the Sylvaneth, and he's buying them up left and right. So it could just be higher demand.
And I've even seen 40K podcasters, like the guys that Forge the Narrative, have jumped into Age of Sigmar with the Sylvaneth releases. So it's calling. You know, they're hot models. They look gorgeous. It's a solid book. Mix that with the General's Handbook coming out. That, you know, the match play obviously is a huge appeal to a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like a perfect storm. And I think that's the biggest reason why the Sylvaneth are just flown off the shelves.
Yeah.
Another big thing that they came out with, if you look at their website, are these big army deals. They have like
match play sets.
Yeah, there's like a destruction play set. Yeah. There's a Nagash themed army, etc.
Play set sounds like we're doing Lego.
Yeah. So, but these are kind of those old school one-click bundles. There's no discounts on any of them. It's just a big lump of models to help get you started, or however you want to do it. Things. But honestly, I think I would lean more towards the start collecting boxes if you're going to get into the game. If there's a start collecting box for an army that you're interested in. I noticed they're coming out with those for 40K more than they are for Age of Sigmar right now, unfortunately. But I think that's because a lot of armies are being kind of revamped.
Yeah. You
know, a la Iron Jaws and Sylvaneth and Fire Slayers. You know, you're probably not going to get a start collecting box for any of those. Whereas with 40K, it's you can throw a troop, a vehicle, and a commander in a box, sell it for $85.
Well, I think there might also be a little bit of Sigma rage in the 40K community, because there have been a lot of releases lately that are focused solely on Sigmar, and in reality, there has not been a lot. The last thing that came out for 40K was the Storm Cloud attack thing, and not a lot of people are really that into the flyer thing. There hasn't been a lot of really cool 40K stuff coming out, so I think they're gonna start hitting the pendulum a little bit towards 40K for a while after the General's Handbook and the campaign.
Well, it is the 1 year anniversary of Age of Sigmar, so and strike while the iron's hot.
Well, and that's it. They're killing it right now, so might as well keep going. We should mention also that the fourth book in the Realm Gate Wars series, All Gates, has come out, and man, is that a hefty tome. It's the biggest, I think, of the four. And, I mean, it is just chock full of stuff. I just started reading it this weekend, but I was doing homework for the podcast, so I couldn't really delve into it. But there's battle plans all over that thing, and I did the cheesy thing, and I went to the end to see how what the gates would look like. I mean, does Sigmar win? And I'm not gonna say what happens here.
Oh,
but
good, because I haven't read it yet.
No,
So.
I'm just gonna say that they're leaving a really crazy setup to go forward, and I don't know what's coming after the Realm Gate Wars, but it's gonna be good. It's gonna be awesome.
Well, they certainly primed it. We'll touch on it later with the Iron Jaws review, but it seems like some of the other factions are finally getting ready to become main stage players.
Yeah, and
instead
jump
of
into
just Stormcast against Chaos, with a little hint of Nagash and Death here, and Gordrak showing up there, things like that. It looks like maybe we're going to see a major push.
I think they really foreshadowed it with the way Archeon handled Vandus Hammerhand. They kind of showed that, Stormcast are cool, but you ain't nothing, buddy. You ain't nothing. So they really set it up that the Stormcast are going to need help. And also something else that just popped out of nowhere, something I think is kind of funny, but Reese Robbins and the guys over at the Frontline Gaming are going to be doing an Age of Sigmar podcast also. So the guys that brought you some pretty crazy battle reports when Age of Sigmar first dropped are now going to be dedicating an hour of their lives to Sigmar every week. So
that's good for you.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll be hyper competitive like their 40K views are.
I hope so. That's what they do.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get into the fluff gaming. And truly, I think the timing is, General's Handbook is coming out. There's points coming out. Now they feel like there's a way to play the game that appeals to them.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they're doing it.
I was listening to it, and actually, they're not starting with the hyper competitive stuff. They're actually working their way through a campaign.
Really?
Yeah, they're starting with small war bands, and they're going to be working their way up towards. I think they've been doing it by wounds to start off with right now, but they're going to be switching over to points.
Right.
So they're going to be doing 500 points, and then 1,000.
Oh, kind of like an escalation league.
An escalation league.
Sweet.
So that's what they're going to be concentrating on I'm assuming the first couple weeks.
So what's the name of the show exactly? Is it still the Signals from the Front Line?
No, it's the Ninth Realm.
Yeah,
The
Ninth Realm. Yeah.
I will definitely be checking that out.
Signals from the Frontline is just their news show. You know, their
Okay.
Buy From Me show.
I just had a thought too that I think most people know that Reese and Frankie and those guys are responsible for the LVO,
Yeah,
the Las
LVO.
Vegas
Yeah.
Open, and some huge
They-
West Coast
Yeah.
40K events. Maybe if they start getting,
Well, they announced
They announced it.
oh,
Yeah,
well,
doing it
They're talking to GW.
shows you what I know.
They actually said GW is going to be there
at
at
LBO.
LVO, probably helping them run an event.
Oh man.
He's already been talking with them. So looks like we better get our LVO tickets for
Oh, yeah.
2018 or 17.
Maybe 2018.
Yeah, it might be sold out already.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I think that's all of the new Dawn stuff.
And now, the Realm of Whispers. Here we're going to talk about the new rumors and things that we've seen hinted at. And it's kind of fortuitous that we're recording today because literally earlier today, screenshots of the new Bonesplitters tome has surfaced. So there's not a lot to go on. There's a grainy shot of a cover of the battle tome. There's a shot of the cover of the next White Dwarf, and a little bit of what's inside it. There's a formation. There was 2 formations.
There's a
that
couple
were shown.
formations. You can see that they do have Bone Grinder specific command abilities.
Bone Splinter.
Yeah.
Bone Splitter.
Bone Splitter.
Yes. Savage Orcs.
They have those command specific abilities, and it looks like they have their own items from what I can tell in the super grainy picture.
I think this is just going to be kind of a quick update for them. I didn't see anything about new models, which is really unfortunate. It'd be nice if they got a little something, because really there's a Shaman on foot, a War Boss on foot, Shaman and War Boss on boar, dudes on boar, and dudes on foot. And that's the extent of that whole line.
I'll bet you they'll come up with something.
Maybe incorporate the troll guts or whatever they're called, the trolls.
Yeah, or I think they're splitting the big Stabas into their own unit. So I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's
Huh.
something.
I don't know. I'm
It's good.
excited to see it. I'm pretty pumped.
It'll probably be like the Flesh Eaters, where they maybe kit bash a kit or
Yeah.
two or something and give you a little bit different options.
Maybe so, yeah.
Although, what do we think? So they're getting the new army-specific command abilities and the army-specific items. Do we think they're going to go back to the existing armies and start retroactively giving those guys stuff? Or do you think the General's Handbook is it for the armies that have already come out?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think the ship has sailed on Iron Jaws and Fire Slayers and Flesh Eater Tome.
And this is going to be the new power level that everything's going to be
I think so.
aspiring to?
See, I don't know. I think they're going to come up with probably at least those command abilities, I forgot what they're called in the General's Handbook, and probably some magic items for each.
Well, there's universal ones for
Yeah.
each of the 4 Grand Alliances,
Right.
but
That's not-
and those will help, but they're not specific to the armies. Whereas like Sylvaneth stuff is specific to their army.
Right.
I would imagine Bone Splitters will be specific to
Mhm.
their army, and that'll help with their synergies and things like that. So I don't know.
I don't know. I'll wait and see, but I think they'll come up with probably. I doubt if it'll be a free PDF or anything, but who knows? Maybe an update to the the order book, the chaos book, the destruction book, and put stuff in there. One of the things that struck me as so odd was those, the Grand Alliance books were so cheap. Makes you wonder that you could go to a much, much quicker production schedule if you're going to sell in that volume. So maybe that's something they have planned. Maybe there's going to be 6-month releases on those books with all the updates. I don't know.
Well, if history has to say anything about it with Games Workshop and Greenskins, it'll be at least 7 to 11 years
Yeah.
before Iron Jaws get anything ever again. So
They'll be the only only book not updated.
Yeah. So
Well, as long as Stormcast gets something new, because they're kind of old and they're kind of showing their age.
Yeah.
sure,
So-
definitely.
We don't have all those fancy items.
They're
Yeah.
definitely lagging behind.
Well, they really are. I mean, compared to virtually anybody else. Sorry. Any other whispers, rumors?
I think that's
Um,
all I saw.
I did hear someone talking about the first week campaign, but I know you don't want to be spoiler free for that.
Oh yeah, so we actually got all the stuff for the campaign at our local
Mm-hmm.
game store, Active Imagination, and Ben did not want to spoil the missions. Everything else we checked out and whatnot, but
Yeah.
the couple sheets that have the mission specific stuff,
Yeah.
it was like, I think it would be more fun if we waited until we all sat down and did that week and then
Yep.
moved to the next week, which I think sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's a way better way.
So we knew that the Bonesplitter stuff was coming out because of the General's Handbook gave us hints at that. The other hints would be the Beastclaw Raiders stuff for the
Ogres.
ogres. So
Mhm.
I would imagine maybe this Bonesplitters thing is just, here's a tome like the Flesh Eaters, no real new models, maybe another character, maybe
Yeah.
something in addition to it. And then maybe like 2 to 4 weeks after that, we'll get the Beastclaw Raiders Battle Tome. And then we can move on to the next big release, which
Yeah.
is hopefully Duard.
Wow, wouldn't that be?
That'd be amazing.
The Realm of Creation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about doing some hobby stuff. The only thing I've worked on in the past 2 weeks is I painted a realm gate, and I haven't even finished it yet because I haven't done the magic liquid stuff that comes out of it yet. But quite literally, other than that, and doing a little bit of work on the Celestant Prime, that was about it. But I know, James, you got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I've been freaking out here the last couple of weeks, coming to realize that we're getting really close to Slobberknocker. I thought I had 3 weeks and looked at the calendar and turned up I had 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks.
Yes.
So
Should we cue up the final countdown? A little.
I've been yeah, I've been staying up pretty late every night to get that stuff finished.
Well, as long as you got my army painted, we're all good.
Yeah, I still gotta rip the arms off your Bloodthirster and
That's not done yet?
no,
Oh, God.
it'll be the last thing on the list.
Right. I'm going to play with an armless Bloodthirster at Slobberknocker.
Nah, so I've been going back and cleaning up the colors on my Stormcast. Been cleaning up the line highlighting, adding some shading. Went through, painted all the gems on all the models, finished the gold. Most of the army is pretty much done, but I haven't got to the object source lighting, which I was really, really hoping to do. So I'm going to get it all painted to my normal tournament standard, and then if I have time, go back and paint that object source lighting. So we'll see how that turns out.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
The gems, are you using the gemstone paints or are you doing them the old-fashioned?
No, I'm doing the old school way.
Cool.
Going with what you're comfortable with.
Yeah,
On an army
I
you
mean,
need to get done. Or...
I don't say I have the time, but I think the gem paints are good if you're taking shortcuts or you need something quick.
Well, they're good for somebody like me that I don't have that kind of skill. So you who do, I can see where you're not going to use it.
More of a beginner's tool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
fair.
they get the job done.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
maybe one day when I get better, I'll try that stuff.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, washes and all that stuff is kind of along those same lines.
Fair enough.
I've also been sketching out my display board for Slobberknocker.
Cool.
I just went to go to the hardware store and bought a whole bunch of foam. So hopefully I'll get that finished next week. Going to do pretty much a ruined temple kind of thing that I sometimes do. Probably going to use one of my existing portals that I've made. Use that on the display board with some broken down pillars. I'm going to have a elevated platform. Usually for my display boards I try to do is break the army up into segments. So I try to put all the shooting stuff behind and elevate it either on a hill or on some type of platform, and then have all the foot units up in front. So, and I'm going to try to match the display board to my basing, which I find actually kind of important. I've seen a lot of display boards where people I don't know if they're recycling it or what it is, but the basing doesn't match the display board, and that always throws me off. It's like I always try to match it pretty close if I can.
Having a snow base on a desert display board. That's what I would do.
Yeah, or their bases are black and they're on a brown board. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
yeah.
Elric, you been up to any hobby?
What's that?
You know, what is it? Every podcast has the one guy that does a hobby.
I'm hoping our team's handicapped.
Did you buy any models? I know some podcasts count that as hobby. So
independent characters counts purchases. So.
Well, I heard Chris Tomlin refer to podcasting as hobby. So
hey, all right,
I'm in the probably you guys are listening to me hobby away right now.
Oh yeah.
So
Check
no.
out that box.
I need to also work on a display board as well. What I'll probably do is just get some piece of sheet metal that's large enough for the entire army to fit on it. That'll also fit inside of a big plastic tub that's tall enough to cover the bloodthirster. I'll mark where the models are going to be on that, and then glue some gravel to it. Maybe spray paint it. Try to dry brush it real quick. I don't know.
That's pretty much your bases are. It's just some glue, some sand, spray paint it black, dry brush it gray, and call it good.
Yeah, so we'll see if that gets done. It might just be a big sheet of sheet metal that they're all magnetized to. So,
although, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you found it, but I found that taking display boards to tournaments actually helps you transport your army around a lot. You don't have to put it away in your case, move to the next table. You just kind of leave your models as they die. You just put them on that display board and put them on there. Go to the next table. As if the tournament has room for the display boards and whatever.
Yeah, they can also kind of get in the way sometimes if everybody's nut to butt, as they say, in a compact room, and then you got everybody's great big trays. That's why I always either use like the lid of the tub that I was carrying the army in, or I used to take like serving trays or something like that. No, they're not pretty and they don't tie the army together, but they do help me get the army around. And the nice thing is, because they're semi-disposable, I can just put them under the table out of the way. Whereas some people with really elaborate display boards are like, okay, well, I'm just going to block this walkway because, I have to cart the Mines of Moria around with me everywhere I go. Because it really brings out the blue in the eyes of my army here. So, I mean, it's cool when it's all set up and it's time to judge painting. But, man, those things can be a pain when you got 100-some people walking around a hall and they're in the way.
Luckily, the tournaments we go to usually aren't that big. So...
No, I'm referring to
Adepticon.
Well, no, like I've never been to Adepticon, but like the old 8th edition tournaments in Texas and stuff, definitely, well over 100 people. And yeah, sometimes those things get in the way a little bit.
Tightly packed.
Right.
That's one thing that used to bug me about Feast of Blades was no room for anything.
Right.
I mean, your 8 foot or 6 foot section is blocked off, and that's it. You have no elbow room.
And then it's the big long rows, so if you want to get out or move around, you
gotta go through 30 people.
Yeah. Well, you work with what you got, and those guys have always did a pretty good job of not making it too claustrophobic. So
now at least they had space between the tables. So
right,
I think that's the realm of creation. That's it. The realm of battle, where we talk about the games we've played since last we met. And this is where I have to put on my little sad face, because we play on Friday nights over at Active Imagination, and I was actually there this week. I was ready to go when I got called into work. I'm so crushed. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. We were looking forward to having
beating my face. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I don't mind clubbing baby seals every now and then.
That's the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of clubbing baby seals, I heard last week you clubbed one.
So I got one game in since the last time we recorded, and I played my Slobberknocker list against another guy at the store, Chad, who played mostly Bloodbound with a huge unit of Blight Kings in the middle. And to be fair, Chad hasn't really had a chance to play Age of Sigmar a whole lot. Usually when he comes down to the store, it's to hang out and build models and throw some paint on them, maybe, but not really. I wanted to get a game in against him, and so we played one of the Slobberknocker missions, and after the top of turn 2, he was done. He didn't want to play anymore because my army actually did what it's supposed to do. And
How is that?
Scarbrand charged into that unit of 20 Blight Kings and did 30 wounds in 1 round of combat. 16 of which are his Carnage wounds, where you get no save of any kind. So, Alariel, I'm coming for you when you're on the table. It's pretty much the only shot I'm going to have at bringing her down. But, yeah, it was disgusting. The army fired off the way it was supposed to. And I attribute a lot of that to Chad just didn't really quite know what he was doing.
Yeah, looked like he set up pretty close on that battle line there.
Yeah, we played, it was a diagonal deployment, and he kind of set up right in the middle, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to meet you about 12 inches away, and we'll see how this works out. And
First turn charge? Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So, but it was fun. It was nice to get in a game, even if it was relatively quick. So that's really what I did. Last week I sat down with the General's Handbook, so I didn't really have a chance. I didn't play a game, but James, you on the other hand have squeezed in a couple.
Yes, I have. Last week I played my son, Julian, his Tomb Kings against my Stormcast. We played scenario 3, I believe, of the Slobberknocker. The one with the Wizard Towers where you're trying to learn.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play that one yet.
You have to learn something at each. Yeah.
Went pretty well. I totally forgot the scenario points in there. Could have been better. Played pretty cautiously, and he's been taking my advice. He has 2 Necrosphinxes in his list, and I told him to run them pretty much together, charge them at the same time on the same side of the board, and there's not much that can deal with that. And he listened to me, and I was pretty much right that it took a big chunk of my army down, and then it took me a lot to take those things down. So,
You mean they weren't shot off the table by adjudicators?
Eventually.
Yeah. After 20 turns.
Because they're the magic win button.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we finished that game. It landed up being like a 15-9 on the scoring system. So
To you?
To me.
Okay.
But he did a lot better. He's getting there. He's working on his
His
skills.
list certainly packs a punch.
And looking at the General's Handbook, it looks like he's going to be able to squeeze even more of that in there.
Yeah, that must be nice. I looked at my Demon Bloodbound list for the General's Handbook, and it goes from being a 100-point South Coast list to about a 2,500-point list in the South Coast or in the General's Handbook point system. So that's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, we've been going through our big collection of Tomb Kings and trying to dig out more Necropolis Knights, and I think we found 6 more. So he might be adding those to his list, and he's got about 16 in Shopti, which are pretty darn cheap as well. So if he drops some of those Necrosphinxes, he might be able to have a pretty massive Tomb King army.
Nice.
Wow. And then I played a game this last week against our friend Jeremy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the better tournament players in 8th edition in our group.
Yeah, he when Age of Sigmar dropped, he vanished from everything. Didn't even go to another tabletop game. He just hung it up, and sad music hulked his way off into the sunset.
Yeah, he came back around the last couple of weeks, which coincidentally was along with the General's Handbook.
Yeah, we've had a couple people showing up.
Yeah.
So he decided he came by, I think, the previous week and watched me and Jules play,
Right.
and he showed up this last week to actually play a game. Took pretty much the core of my Slobberknocker list, and decided instead of the Prime and a couple of the other units I decided to throw in the Star Drake because I find he's less than optimal. I know most people will disagree with me, but every time I've used him in a game, he really underperforms. I don't know if that's me using him wrong or what, but he just...
I would imagine his list, or I'm sorry, the dragon might have done pretty well against his list with the Reign of Stars, because Jeremy plays in 8th edition. He was all about MSU, with the multiple small units. He would never take anything over 10 models, and the only time it was 11 is when he'd stick a cheap character in there for a little bit of a boost or whatever needed to be done, and he would just swarm the board with tons of Dark Elf units, and then he didn't care about any of them. Which,
pretty much.
Which was
very Dark Elfy of him.
Yeah, well, and it
should
worked so well because he was not afraid to feed you any unit. And next thing you knew, you'd think you were racking up all these points against him, and you really weren't. Everything was just under, a point in the 20-0 system. And by turn 4 or 5, you didn't really have anything left in your army to kill with. And it's just like, what? How did that happen? You have these just tiny little units of executioners and witches and crossbowmen and a couple bolt throwers at the back, and now I have no army. Crazy how effective he was with that.
Yeah, and actually, in our game, he actually kicked my butt pretty well. I think when we ended up totaling the points, he had 23, and I think I had like 9.
Oh, man.
I mean, I think I had killed most of his army.
Well, yeah, but that's usually how.
But he had won on this. He was paying attention to the scenario, whereas I really wasn't, and had kind of got lost. So that's where and that kind of just goes to show that while AOS is simple, that it's still very tactical, because the people who were good in 8th edition are still doing good.
Absolutely.
In Age of Sigmar, we see that in the UK tournament scene.
Oh yeah,
Russ Veal, Jack Armstrong, those guys were the guys to beat in 8th edition, and they're still the guys to beat in AOS.
Sigmar,
and Jeremy was our best tournament player. He kind of looked at the rules his first game, and
just had it all figured out, ready to go. Yeah, I'll take the win.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and his list was pretty much the same.
It was pretty much his 8th edition. It was 3 units of crossbows, unit of 10 blackguard, 10 executioners, 2 bolt throwers, a Hydra, some Dark Riders, and a sorcerers and a BSB. It wasn't anything.
Yeah.
Nothing special. I mean, he only had 1 unit of warlocks. So I mean,
yeah,
it was nothing. It was nothing crazy. It didn't look like anything, but of course, he just got that tactical mind where he death by 1,000 cuts and takes you down.
Well, we're gonna have to hopefully hook him back in and start taking him with us to hopefully team tournaments and stuff, so we can ride his coattails to victory again.
Or just assault his ego with the Sylvaneth army.
There you go.
So those were my games.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So that should cover the realm of battle.
The realm of conquest,
where we talk about our preparations and everything else for tournament play. And I think, James, you wanted to kick it off with Slobberknocker stuff, right?
Yeah, I just want to talk about some prep.
Prep in general.
Prep in general, yes. So we've been practicing the scenarios for the Slobberknocker GT.
Right.
And after every game, I've been analyzing what I could do better, what I forgot, just little things like that.
How the scenario works.
Because it's a lot of the times it's very different from what you read in the tournament pack versus what plays out on the table. So, been doing that, and what I'm planning to do for the tournament is make a note card for each game, and just to write down the stuff I've learned on that, and maybe things to watch out for in that scenario.
Yeah.
Because I noticed, like I said, with my last game with Jeremy, the scenario got away from me, and I just kind of rushed it all forward, and then forgot about the scenario, and then by turn 4 or 5, it's like, oh, well, too late to do that. Oops.
Yeah. Pro tip: that's how you really win tournaments. Is not necessarily kicking your opponent's teeth in and taking all their models off, but it's paying attention to that scenario. That's where the real points generally come from. So you can stay on target, rack up those points. That's usually how those guys get to the top.
Yeah, because I think I'm going to make myself some tokens for the tournament, just to remind me of some stuff. I know for game 3, it's the wizard one, and since I play Stormcast, I don't have lots of wizards. But in the scenario of your character gets near one of the wizard towers, on like a 2+, he becomes a wizard. And the scenario is to cast Arcane Bolt and a Mystic Shield and kill stuff with an Arcane Bolt. So when I play that one with Julian, I really didn't remember that, and it could have helped me a couple times in the game. Plus, I didn't get as many scenario points on that one. So I'm probably going to make a little token that says, hey, you're a wizard now.
Yeah, definitely.
Next to my guy, and that's the cool thing about AOS. You can make a lot of tokens to help you remind you of effects you have going on. I know we found that pretty useful in our games.
Yeah, next thing you know, it looks like you're playing a game of War Machine. Yeah, I remember you talking about that mission because I thought, oh, sweet, I'm going to have Scarbrand casting spells.
Oh, God.
How fluffy is that?
Please, someone make it stop. Just on a side note, real quick, I want to plug on my website. I've got a whole bunch of downloadable tokens for Age of Sigmar. So if anybody wants to go out there, it'll be in the show notes, the address for my blog, and you can download a whole crap load of tokens for your Age of Sigmar games.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So, moving on.
I think that's pretty much all I had for Slobberknocker, other than...
Or just tournaments in general.
Yeah, just tournaments in general. I mean,
Yeah.
I find that really helpful. I don't know if you guys have any other...
No, just generally like any tournament that is going to release their missions and early, definitely try to play through them and see how it works, because it does play a lot differently than how you read it sometimes. I know, like the first one we played, they had the Old World man that bounces all over the place when he takes damage, and then you can move him in your turn, your opponent moves him again on his turn. It can be pretty hard to adapt to something like that. So it's nice to have, like I used a unit of corn dogs to just pin him, and they were fast enough to keep up with him all the time until I maxed out on the points from him, and then I could use that unit to come around and try to do damage. At that point, the game was pretty much over, but it's still a useful tactic to have a quick unit like that can pump out damage for that mission. And because we played that mission, I can adapt to that. If you know that the tournament you're going to is just going to do like generic missions out of the book, like in 8th edition, it was usually we're going to run a 5-round tournament. We'll use 5 missions out of the book, excluding Watchtower. It's pretty easy to get used to those. You don't want to play Battle Line over and over. You want to check out some of the others and look at how your army is going to adapt to those things, like deploying short end to short end, the long way down. Can I cover that distance with this army? Yeah. Things like that. So definitely when the General's Handbook comes out, people should probably look over those missions. On that note, Tyler Mengel, he does the Mengel Miniatures painting blog. He's started doing some in-depth reviews of the battle plans out of the General's Handbook, so you can check those out too.
Yeah, I got a quick look at them, and they seem pretty interesting.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to. I definitely want to delve into them, because that's what I'll be using for the Rolling Bad Rumble is missions out of the General's Handbook.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For those, it looks like number of models is actually pretty important in this scenario.
Yes, that's one of the big things and they talk about that a lot on, I don't remember which podcast it was. I think it was it Facehammer? That it's number of models now, so just sticking a Bastillodon back on an objective isn't going to win you the objective.
Exactly.
You actually have to put stuff out there.
Go Moon Clan.
Yeah, some of them require a certain number of models. Some of them require, I think, 5, and then some of them are just whoever has the most models within 6 inches of an objective claims it.
It'll be really interesting for some armies, like even Stormcast, which tend to be a smaller army, or ogres. I mean, ogres can always take grots as well. That's an option for them.
Well, especially also armies that can't move that quick. It's going to be tight.
Yeah.
You're going to have to garrison everything.
Right.
Yeah, and some of those you have to watch out for. It looks like a lot of them can end on turn 3.
Really?
If you're not careful.
Yeah.
Oh,
if the other guy, if someone's got like both objectives or all 3 or something like that, and you're not contesting them, game over. Turn 3.
Jeez.
So that's just something you got to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And speaking of prepping, playing scenarios and making sure you got your bases covered, we had to submit our list this week to
For the
Slobberknocker.
Slobberknocker, yeah. In order to get the extra points for early submission.
Yeah.
So definitely you want to. That's another thing is if the tournament you're going to offers stuff like that, bonus points for early submission or early payment or anything like that. If you know you're going, why not seize that? Especially if something does come up, if the TO is willing to work with you and get you reimbursed for any money you put down. But we both racked up some free tournament points for just sending in a payment and an army list. So we can go over our armies real quick if you want.
Sure.
So I'm taking, I touched on it. It's mostly Khorne Demons with a couple of Khorne Bloodbound characters. I got Wrath of Khorne, Bloodthirster, Scarbrand, the Bloodstoker, and the Blood Secrator. Those are my character models. I got a big block I got 30 Bloodletters, which I'll pretty much always be running as a single unit.
I think I talked to him and he said, whatever you submit on your army list is how the units have to stay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're not able to change up the units in different sizes.
Oh no!
You might want to talk to him.
Yeah,
you do it as 3 units.
I see an email going out tonight in my future because I put them all individually, so it'd be easier to read.
Yeah, that's why I asked
list.
him that. I wanted to see if we could, if we're taking 6 pool choices or whatever, if we could play 1, 1, and 4, or if we had to play 2, 2, and 2 every single round. He said it was
the latter.
The latter, yep.
Oh no! All right, well,
Fix it.
Yeah, definitely. So then it will be a 30-man unit of Bloodletters, and then I'm running 10 Fleshhounds of Khorne as one just big, fast, hitty unit. 3 Juggernauts of Khorne, because they were the models I had on hand. They really don't seem to be performing all that well, but they're fairly fast. Maybe they can cover a flank or something like that.
Provide that spot in your formation.
All right. And then 3 Skull Cannons.
So, because you want to be the guy with 4 Skull Cannons?
I would have taken it if that 4th Skull Cannon matched the army paint scheme, but or the basing and all that, but it didn't. It stuck out like a sore thumb.
And the Stormcaster bad why? I'm sorry.
Well, if it was 8th edition, then that list would be disgusting. But they're good by all means. Skull Cannons are still really good. They're just not the terror.
The 10 from the back.
Yeah, the 10 from the back, take it off. 10 from the back, take it off. Look at me, I know how to play Warhammer, kind of thing. So they actually really don't. In my games, they really don't do a whole lot. They pick at units here and there, but generally that one-shot D6 wounds. If it gets through, 1 or 2, maybe 3
No,
wounds.
they're more, I think, character killers or pinpointing specific targets that need to be eliminated.
Yeah, I use them mostly to kill, because the range is really good on them, for sure. And I use them to, take out support stuff way in the back, and then I try to let Scarbrand and
Ryan was doing. He was using them to take out my prosecutors before they could get up to him.
Right.
So.
But yeah, that's my list, and I'm basically just whip and charge the Bloodletters in, and then just watch the kill count from Scarbrand go through the roof if he makes it. And I've noticed that while Scarbrand is, the named Bloodthirster and terrifying and everything like that, the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster is a more eye-catching model. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that maybe people will be like, "Oh man, I got to get that big nasty Bloodthirster and shoot him, and then let Scarbrand sneak in."
Mm-hmm. I think Scarbrand's reputation precedes him.
The automatically starting off incandescent with his rage is the look on Chad's face when I busted out his page rules, and I was like, see all these different things he can do? Well, he's really, really angry, so he's going to just do all of it. And he's like, okay, why am I playing this game? Kind of look. But so yeah, we'll see how it works out when we get over there. That's my list. How about you?
The real list.
Yeah.
Pretty much went with what I've been practicing with. I went with a Celestin Prime, a Knight Venator, the bow guy.
Yeah.
Went with the Knight Azeros, flying lantern angel guy.
Really good choice.
He
Surprised you don't see that more often.
It's very list dependent. I think with what I have, with all the shooting, with every model in my army shooting, he's invaluable.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I got him. I have the Beast Battle Mage.
Oh, so you did go with the...
I did go with him.
Lizard. Okay.
Yeah. I was coming down to the last 7 points or something like that, or 6 points or something. I was like, oh, it was either between him or another Fulminator. And I decided to go with the Beast Mage. I had him. I'm going for painting, not necessarily for battle. So
there you go.
I figured
he looks pretty cool.
He's definitely cooler looking. And then I also had... I should know this list by now, but I don't.
No, that's fine.
Knight Heraldor.
Well, Tootie Toots.
2-2, yep. So that rounds up my characters. And then, of course, I had 5 Judicators, 5 Judicators, 5 Judicators.
Oh, delicious fluff.
Hey, that's a lot of shooting, isn't it?
Yeah, they're all battle line in the new.
I know.
In the new General's Handbook.
That's convenient.
2 Fulminators, a single Tempestor, and a single Tempestor. And the beauty about this list is when I ran it through the General's Handbook, it's exactly 2,000 points.
Oh, wow.
And I still have my 3 battle line units. So actually, I don't have to change a thing.
Nice. So we'll be seeing that at our GT.
Probably. I don't have time to learn a new list, so. But yeah, I've been liking those Fulminators. They're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If they get the charge on you, they're doing 3 damage apiece with their lances, and if you charge them on their turn, they're doing 2 mortal wounds per breath attack, which is pretty gross.
Yep.
So, and then of course, who doesn't want to take a single Tempestor and just be like, you're -1 to hit me now, just because.
Yeah,
you have to take him.
Pretty good.
And then, so that's pretty much my list. It's about a 60-40 split between characters and units. I find the Stormcast, you kind of have to go character heavy. The characters really make the Stormcast army.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And the characters are so good with what they do too. I think maybe the weakest character would be the
Knight Venator.
Yeah, the bow guy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he looks so good on paper
Yeah.
for what he could possibly do, but it's so rare that I see him actually just deliver that massive bow shot.
Yeah, most of the time they make the save, or you roll a 1 and you don't do that many wounds. The reason I took him again was for paint. That way, I was planning out how I have on the display board. I'm going to have the big Celestin Prime and then the 2 angel guys on the side of him.
Oh, nice.
To help. I noticed when I do my boards for most of the armies, I like that symmetry or the balancing of stuff. So I found that most of my lists tend to land up being that way.
Right on. Yeah, and Celestin Prime is obviously a solid choice. He's a pretty hitty bro.
Yeah, I think he'll be pretty tough to bring down. And
you're just gonna have to be more patient with him.
Yes, definitely have to be more patient. Every time I've used him, I've brought him down too early. So I don't think he's coming down to at least turn 4. I just need not to get so jittery and just wait.
So they are 6-round turns?
They are 6 rounds, which I'm actually really, really liking. I know in the new handbook it says 5 turns, and I know most of the comp systems we played with all say 5 turns, but I'm really liking 6 turns. I feel it gives you more time to do stuff instead of run into battle, fight a little bit, and then everyone runs away towards the objectives. Where at least in 6 turns, it's only 1 more turn, but it feels like you have a lot more time to accomplish
more breathing room
what you need to do.
Yeah. You don't have to run helter skelter for everything in the very first turn of the game. You can actually think about your deployment.
Yeah, and I actually been finding that with my army helps. The ones where I kind of rush forward at my opponents are the ones where I perform pretty badly, and then the ones where I kind of sit back.
Yeah,
I've actually let them just come into that trap
Well,
kind
yeah,
of
you gotta let
works
the
better.
ranged units do their job for sure.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of like an 8th edition thing. I know in 8th edition we all used to just dance around, and for 2 or 3 turns we would position our units, and then stuff would happen on turn 3 and 4.
Yeah, use your one saber tusk to divert 40 intelligent people that should be able to overlook that dog at the massive body of ogre flash charging him. But no, that
puppy.
Yeah, the puppy is obviously the bigger threat here.
Well, okay.
So yeah, that's why I've been taking. I looked at the scenarios pretty well. I think I have most of my bases covered. I know in this one, characters are pretty important. Actually, I know they have a cap on half the army being characters, but I think I'll do pretty well, at least in Theory Hammer. We'll see. We'll see how it goes in real life.
Yeah, I was hoping to go with an all corn demons, but the Secrator and the stuff
they're just too good.
Yeah, those roles obviously are not filled by just poking in exalted bloodletters or whatever they are. So the hero levels just don't do the same thing. Oh, and I'm also running the formation, the crazy corn one that lets you attack D3, pile in and attack D3 times in the hero phase. If I could ever remember that. I don't even remember what all it does. That's how many times it's
Like I
come
said,
up.
that should be on your card at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every turn, every hero phase, look at that card.
I need a blood
pilings.
for the blood god token or
Yep.
something as a reminder.
Oops, I got to make a new token.
There you go.
So is that it for Conquest?
I think that's it.
The Realm of Lore.
In this segment, we talk about the fluff concerning a faction, and then the modeling and the hobby and all the other good stuff, and then how to use them. And in this installment, we're going to cover the Iron Jaws. Something close to Elric's heart.
One.
How did I know that was coming? So, as usual, I'm going to cover the fluff, just a little bit of the fluff for the orcs, because no self-respecting orc keeps written histories, so there's really not a lot. Just so everybody knows, the god of the orcs is a thing called Gorka Morka, the two-headed god of the orcs. And the story back behind him is, of course, he had a falling out with himself one day and split himself into two to become Gork and Mork, one of whom is brutally cunning, that's Mork, and the other one is cunningly brutal, which is Mork. Did I just say Mork twice? Because that's actually Gork.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, but when enough orcs get together, they actually join back together as one and work as one to make sure that Orkkind gets all the stuff they want to do. Now, Gorka Morka actually started out as the feral champion for Sigmar during the old times, but he kind of struck out on his own.
Got tired of all the order.
Yeah, there's just far too much order. Need a little fun. So, orcs are natives of the realm of Gur, so they have their own little place in the world. Had a lot of fun. For orcs, the only thing is war. They're not, Khorne is all about the blood. Orcs are all about war. All they want to do is fight and fight and fight some more. And when they've killed everybody, they split into different tribes and fight each other. It's just about the fighting. So they're actually really a lot of fun guys. One of the great stories that's in the book and in the lore is Archaon at one point send a General Darkhorn the Devourer, and he was charged with the task of wiping out all the Orcs. Of course, there's got to be something to be said for the fact that the Orcs are still around, and Darkhorn's skull adorns the gates of the Baron Spire. So, even when Archaon orders them to be wiped out and it doesn't happen, they got to be pretty cool. But the best story of all has got to be the Orcs and their relationship with Archaon, because 3 separate times they have vandalized him specifically just to make him mad. By defacing the monolithic statue of Archaon, which overlooks the Manticore Realm Gate. So the first time they did this, they just took the gate over. They knocked off the helm of Archaon and replaced it with a carving of the face of Gork. Then Archeon, of course, sent a legion to take it back. Finally got it back, had it fixed. At which point the Orcs attacked again, took it, and they removed the head of Archeon and replaced it with a carving of a wooden grot head. So you can imagine how Archeon reacted to that. Being as
So
he's a
good.
mellow guy.
Right. He handles everything well.
He does. He's very calm. He's done anger management. So, and the last time he took it back, fixed it up. The last time he actually built a structure, a keep around the gate and the statue. And of course the Orcs took it, knocked the whole damn thing down, and put up an idol of Gork. So, you had another story you wanted to talk about?
Oh, yeah. My favorite is during the Age of Myth, when Gorkamorka himself was leading the Iron Jaws and the rest of the Orcs around on a rampage. He made it all the way to the edge of existence and stood on the edge and stared off into the void and spit into the void, turned around and went the other way and did it all over again. It's so good that he's just unfazed by anything. He just wants to fight, and that's the great thing about the Iron Jaws and the Orcs in general. Yeah. It just, everything needs a good punching in the face.
You can't really talk about the Orcs without talking about the Wog. And, I mean, nobody knows really what the power is, but whenever you get enough Orcs in an area and they're all mad about the same thing, you end up with this thing called the Wog. And it's what powers the Orcs. I mean, it's what gives them everything from their shamans and their spells. It powers them. And if you get enough war bosses and enough killing, carnage usually, together, it can actually start to affect other races. I mean, it's just that powerful of a thing. And I mean, you really can't define whether it's warp because it doesn't seem tainted, but it's just this incredible power that the Orcs have to get together and, for a moment at least, discard their petty differences and fight together as mobs of millions of Orcs and just lay waste to stuff.
No, that's an interesting point you bring up with the whole, like, is it warp energy?
Yeah.
Because it's not tainted, and that's always been something about greenskins throughout.
Yeah.
Well, the little bit here in Age of Sigmar that we've had, and all throughout the world that was, and even in 40K, Orcs are never really corrupted.
No, they don't.
Chaos just doesn't ever seem to be able to take a hold of them.
No,
and
it doesn't
turn them,
take root because they don't care.
Is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the only race that I know of that is specifically free of the taint of chaos. You've never had an Orc fall to chaos.
Yeah, not that I know of. I'm sure somebody will be like, "Oh, there was this one time."
You remember in this book? Yeah.
But I not that I know of.
That's a brief history of the fluff of the Orcs. Now Elric's going to delve right into the actual Iron Jaws themselves.
So the models, when I started my Iron Jaws collection, I purchased everything except the brute models because I conveniently had a bunch of very nicely converted models that I bought off of a friend of mine that were conversions using Black Orcs and 40K knobs.
Oh, wow.
So the models are roughly the same size as a brute. He put them on 40 mil rounds. This was even before we knew Iron Jaws were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that, just everything worked out well for me, and I got 30 of them. So
nice.
I might need to pick up a box of brutes just to get the Gore Choppa.
Yeah.
And get a couple of those going around. But as far as the rest of the models, they're absolutely phenomenal. This was a huge release for Games Workshop. It was really popular, really successful. It was all over the place on Twitter and Facebook. Everybody was buying them up. They sold out.
Like the models are gorgeous. I mean, they're just amazingly good looking.
Yeah, I know the yellow paint scheme didn't quite strike everyone's fancy, but
even with that, it sold out. I mean, even with it not being that visually appealing, they still sold out because they're that good.
The models, everything went together really well as far as, the characters and everything. The Gore Gruntas, I think really the only problems I had with Gore Gruntas is that when you put the boar together, there's a mouthpiece that has like the tongue,
Mm-hmm.
the bottom part.
Yeah.
There's like some tufts that come out, and you assemble basically the whole model, and then you have to try to fit this thing in, and it's a pain. You have to like force it in, and it eventually pops into place. Is how I
Yeah, I think I was the one who had to do that for you.
Yeah, because I thought that maybe I had gotten mixed up on which piece I'd clipped out, or because it was just not fitting. And finally, it did snap in, and it's almost like a snap fit bit at that point. The other one is it comes with these like skull and horn bits that you kind of glue on randomly to the sides and stuff. They look cool, but they don't really make a lot of sense. I put them on mine because I want to do multiple units and I want to be able to kind of differentiate.
Yeah.
So I'll put them on some of them, but for the most part, I'm going to leave them off because they strike me as those are the first pieces that snap off when you put them in foam or anything like that. They're just real fiddly, but
Spiky bits.
yeah. But other than that, the model, the Gore Grunts went together really well. The Mega Boss and the War Chanter has these plates on his chest with these horns that come up. So basically his whole head is like encased in these horns. Those just did not really make a whole lot of sense. The pictures they have of the models they put together, the plates fit together really well. Mine did not. I don't know if maybe the nubs that rested in the chest piece just weren't the right size, maybe needed to be filed down or something. I don't know, but mine looks a little bit different than the ones they have. I also noticed some people on Twitter took a little gap filler and filled in those little bits on the chest and just didn't put the front plates on at all. And that's, that looked pretty good as well. And then you have the Maw Crusher. And while this is...
Speaking of the 600-pound gorilla.
Yeah, this thing is probably... I know a lot of people are absolutely in love with the new Alarial model. And to a lesser extent, the Drycha. And those models are phenomenal. The Alarial is amazing what they're doing. But to me, the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher is probably my favorite Games Workshop model I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
So I was so happy to put this thing together until I actually started trying to put it together. This thing was a pain. I don't know if anybody else really had difficulties with it, but the surface areas of trying to put it together, there's nothing that's really flat. They're all very angled, and it reminded me of trying to put together an old 3rd edition Space Marine Rhino, but a round version
Oh, God.
of that.
Oh, yay.
He did not want to go together in a lot of places. It took a great deal of patience. I have a feeling anybody, who's really new to this hobby, if they bought a Maw Crusher, oh man, they probably bought a tub of green stuff to go with it because it's easy to leave some gaps. I also didn't glue on the arms of mine because I want to be able to prime it and get the paint and all the creases and crevices of it. I also didn't. I built mine as Gorbad.
Yeah. Gordrak.
Gordrak. Yeah. Holy cow, how do I forget that? He's only like the greatest Orc ever. I built mine as Gordrak. I left him separate. I put him together, but I'm going to paint him separately as well. And he's such an imposing, amazing model. Yeah, that's, kind of my review of the models. The Ard Boys are just the old Black Orcs that we used to have, so they go together actually pretty well. They got great big surface areas, easy to put together. And the cool thing about them and their War Scroll is they can be armed with anything. They're not one of those that has like 2 different weapon options that you pick one or the other. You can have both freely throughout the whole unit kind of thing. So that's the Iron Jaws, from a model perspective. As far as tactics and how they play or anything like that, I'll admit that I don't have a whole lot of experience with them firsthand. I haven't had a chance with the Slobber Knocker coming up. I wanted to get some practice in with the demons and whatnot. But I do have to tell you that the Iron Jaws are a little bit underwhelming. Their performance on the table.
Really?
The foot guys are slow, painfully slow.
Mm.
And I talked about this, I think, in episode 1, where I talked about how I think you do one list or the other, in that you do an all-foot army and let it all move together, let your mega boss on foot and your war chanters synergize with brutes, and maybe throw some ard boys out there for some extra bodies, seeing as how the General's Handbook seems to be wanting to rely on number of models to take objectives if you want to play an all Iron Jaws list. Or you load up on mock rushes and gore gruntas and just play a hyper aggressive in your opponent's face list, and it certainly can work. You take something like the Gore Fist that has 3 to 5 units of gore gruntas, and then you take it with specifically, I think, Gordrak, because his command ability stacks really well with it, in that the formation allows you to make that 15-inch move before the game even starts.
Yeah.
So you set up on your deployment line, you move 15 inches, then they can move their 9. Gordrak pops his feet, or I'm sorry, not his feet. He pops his command ability, which then allows them to charge using 3 dice, and gives them 2 additional attacks both on the rider and the mount, which is huge for the mount on the charge, because they do D3 damage.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that I think on paper sounds really tasty, but I have a feeling, in play, a lot of your good players are going to see something like that coming, and they'll deploy accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your big shot, was, getting them in there. That being said, if you have maybe 15 Gore Gruntas in your opponent's face, and Gordrak and another Maw Crusher, I don't even know if that'll fit in the. I know you have a list.
I have a list. Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't quite what I'm saying, but I think if you can squeeze in that second Maw Crusher, maybe. Yeah, you can squeeze it in. The Maw Crushers themselves do a great deal of damage. I think the devastating or the destructive bulk, and you can leapfrog that. There's a lot of other podcasts that have kind of talked about lightly on potential tactics like this. One downside that I find with Gordrak is when it comes to fighting things like Alariel or Nagash or Archeon, Gordrak's your man.
Yeah.
If you got even, I think, moderate dice, you're going to put those characters down in about 1 round of combat. When it comes to fighting anything else, Gordrak is not that impressive. I mean, he's got a lot of attacks, sure, but the best he has is Rend 1.
Yeah.
I know his mount has a Rend 2 bite, the fists. The fists are Rend 2. So for a monster, he's still pretty good, but he loses a lot of what makes him Gordrak when he just fights regular guys. He's not really any better than a regular war boss on Maw Crushes. So maybe in a tournament or something, if you want to take like an all Iron Jaws list, and you want to take something real mobile like the guys on Gore Gruntas and some Maw Crushes, if it looks like you're going to be going up against stuff like Nagash, I know Nagash is a real popular one, so is Archeon, and obviously Alariel is going to be all over the place too with the Sylvaneth hotness. It is nice to have Gordrak as that ace up the sleeve to maybe try to get in there and take care of them, especially if they have a sideboard. You can maybe sideboard Gordrak and just play some other Iron Jaw stuff and then break him out.
Yep.
When you really need that.
Well, it seems to me the whole purpose of Gordrak is keeping with the Orc fluff. He's just going to run up and smash you in the mouth, and he's going to smash the biggest thing he can find in the mouth. He's not going to be going after the unit of Liberators. Now he's going after the Prime.
Well, he's actually not that good against the Prime. I've seen some battle reports where the Prime puts him down pretty hard, because the Prime is neither a wizard nor a monster.
Oh, that's
so Gordrak doesn't really do. If he whiffs with the beast's punch attacks, he's not doing a whole lot.
Wow.
Whereas when the Celestant Prime swings back, Gordrak has no armor. He's just eating all that to the face. So
he's got a 3-up save.
Goes to a 6.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Galmaraz is
the old -3 Ren.
Pretty nasty. Whereas the Star Drake, it might be a little different. I know the
Yeah.
Star Drake can bounce some stuff back or
Yeah.
whatever, but I think he's
Yeah, the Star Trek doesn't really do good against other monsters
yeah,
and stuff.
not
He's an infantry killer. He's not really
even with the Templar, which I thought would be the more monster hunter.
Yeah, even with the glaive, he's really
yeah,
it's a very situation. You're hoping to roll sixes.
yeah.
I'm building mine as a Templar just because I don't want the command ability, but I don't know if I would take him up against a Gordrak. No.
Probably not.
No.
So I know you want to talk about a list that you pinned up.
Yeah, I mean you were complaining that you couldn't get too many points in or too many models in for a General's Handbook
Yeah,
army list.
I don't think I'm the only person that feels that maybe the Iron Jaws took a pretty heavy hit with the conversion to the General's Handbook, especially Gordrak going to 700 points. That's on par with Archeon.
Yeah, that's
And
monster points.
Yeah, and the only thing higher than that is Nagash. Nagash pretty much is a one-man army, and Archeon is...
He's a one-man army.
Yeah, well, when you look at Archeon, he doesn't really fight that well.
No, he doesn't.
The best he has is a Rend 1. So unless he's rolling those double sixes on the Slayer of Kings,
Yeah.
he's really not putting out a lot of damage, but that's not what
That's
he's
not
about.
what you buy him for, though.
Right.
You bring him in for
He's
all
a
the other
spellcaster
things he
that throws 2 spells. His command
allows
ability is,
everybody to do their command abilities.
which sounds great till you're playing a 2,000-point game and he's 700 points and you don't really have a whole lot of points.
You don't have
for
a lot of other
characters.
commanders.
Kind of suffers the same thing that Nagash does. So I wonder if those 3 have kind of been pointed out of conventional play, unless you're playing maybe like 2,500.
Well, and there could be that whole thought of keep them out of match play because they are so overpowered.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure at 2,000 you're going to see Ilariel.
Oh yeah,
Not only does she destroy the world at 5 attacks at damage 5 off the beetle, but her magic is amazing. She heals everything. She can summon new units. I mean, and she's cheaper than those 3 characters.
yeah, which is
But-
sort of odd.
I don't want to rant too much about point. I really don't want to go down that road of complaining about points costs. And we had a delightful, calm year without that, and it's coming back with a vengeance. But we'll try to stay away from that. But I am kind of concerned that maybe Gordrak is pointed out of like a more conventional game, and maybe you have to rely on regular mega bosses on mock rushes, which aren't bad.
No, they're not bad
they can
at all.
still pump out a great deal of damage.
Yeah.
They have an improved wog over the guy on foot, so that's really good. He works just as well if you surround him with Gore Gruntas in that formation. Well, not just as well, but pretty close. I mean, he, for being 180 points cheaper than the big boss, I think he still does pretty well. Yeah. And that's where we kind of touch on your list.
Yeah, so based on the General's Handbook, you could fit in just a quick theory hammer here. You could do a Maw Crusher, 2 War Chantas, a Weird Knob Shaman. To round out your characters, you're looking at 800 points there. And then you could do 3 units of 6 Gore Gruntas. And then the Gore Fist formation, and that would get you to 2,000 points. So that way, each one of those War Chanters, or you'll have 1 unit that's not getting the bonus, but the War Chanters buff the Gore Grunters because that happens in the hero phase. Yeah. And they don't have to be within range at the end in the combat phase. So they just do it, use their move afterwards.
Oh yeah, that move happens in the hero phase.
In the hero
before
phase.
The game starts.
Yeah, exactly. So you get you get to buff them with your War Chantas, your move again. So they're going in there hitting on 2s.
Yeah.
With extra attacks from the Maw Crusher and the formation. So that's not too bad. I think it's worth it taking a look at possibly after Slavadacher and using some proxies maybe to see if it's even worth it.
Right. And I also want to try and see if the foot list is viable as well. I would like to. I took the Mega Knob or the mega boss in armor on foot in one game, and he just got sniped before he ever made it into combat because he's just so slow. But I think maybe if I take a big foot army with the formation that allows them to essentially run in the hero phase, you move D6 in the hero phase, but you can't run later. Right. But it does mean that you can charge. So it's kind of like being able to run and charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good formation.
It's pretty handy for a group that doesn't move all that fast.
So yeah, we may touch on Iron Jaws here in maybe like 6 months or so after we've gotten through our little bit of tournament phase coming up here in the next 4 weeks, and then
after you're done scraping all those mold lines.
I can't. Good old Ard boys, you know. Oh, and we're talking about doing a Path to Glory campaign after the tournaments, and there's an Iron Jaws Path to Glory list in there, so that's definitely where I'll be using them.
So that should just about cover the Iron Jaws, right?
Yeah. Oh, and just real quick, also in the General's Handbook, they do give you kind of universal destruction bonuses. Yeah. So they get to touch on that stuff as well. And there's some bits in there. I don't remember them off the top of my head because I haven't really had a chance to sit down and digest the General's Handbook quietly. But there are a couple items in there.
Yeah, I think
really
the destruction has access to the Talisman of Protection, that 4-up.
Yeah, having a 4-up ward. You can't take it on Gordrak. You can't put him on named characters.
No named characters.
You could take it on the guy on foot, and maybe he could actually make it into combat. Or you could take it on a Maw Crusher, a regular boss on a Maw Crusher, because they tend to get exposed out there by themselves. Give them a little bit of survivability.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, well, I'll give a kind of a status update on the greenskins. And now, the Realm of Sunset,
where we're going to cover the year in review. It's been over a year. July 4th was the anniversary of the Age of Sigmar, and we're just going to share our thoughts on where the game is and where it's going and what's going on.
Yeah, it's obviously circling the drain. There's really nothing left here. I mean, we should all abandon ship and go play Pokemon Go with all the other kids, right?
That's kind of what I was thinking, seeing as it's a loss leader for GW and they're going to pretty much stop making models in this range. Yeah, what's the point?
It's all over but the crying.
Yeah.
I tell you, what a year. It's been nonstop releases. They've just been knocking them out of the park. Like we touched on, Iron Jaws sold out pretty much. Sylvaneth completely blew out. Yeah. The Gore Chosen box sold out. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just been...
GW's tournament, they just sold out in a day, 2 days.
2 days.
100 spots.
Yeah, exactly.
100 spots went out in 2 days.
This was the first match play tournament they've run. Yeah. So it's been amazing. The amount of books that we got. I'm looking over here at the collection, and that's not even all of them.
It's not all of them. Yeah.
We've gotten all 4 of the huge Realm Gate Wars tomes. We got the original big book, all the army books that have just touched on just a crazy amount of stuff. We got the Everchosen and Khorne Bloodbound, all 4 of the Grand Alliance releases. They did some really nice painting guides for a lot of the different armies that came out. It's just a ton of stuff, and Seraphon was thrown in there for some weird reason. Model wise, it's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I remember when the End Times came out, some of the models we were getting for the End Times with the Morghasts and the Mortarks of Night and all of that stuff, and then Nagash was just like, holy cow.
That Nagash was an eye-opener for anybody that looked at models, miniatures.
And now it's like, we're just going up from there. I mean, you look at when Archeon came out, it was just like, holy cow, what a model. Speaking of which, did you guys see the Khorne conversion Archeon that they had on their website?
Yeah, I did.
You didn't see that? I got a picture. I'll show you afterwards. Yeah. They basically took the 3 heads of Drogar, but replaced them all with Bloodthirster heads.
Oh, my.
And then converted Archeon to, be all corned out and everything. Just Oh, that's got to be. I didn't think that model could get any cooler, and then they tricked it out like that. So phenomenal. And then I don't know. Would you say there's been a miss? I guess if we had to do real quick, kind of like, what's your least favorite Age of Sigmar release, and what's your favorite Age of Sigmar release? Just kind of off the cuff. I know we didn't really prepare for it. Bill, what would you say is your least favorite?
Least favorite would probably be the Fire Slayers. I personally don't like the look of them.
Yeah.
I think they look far too much like Server Barbie or Mohawk Barbie. So,
Wow. Fair enough.
I mean, I know they're great and all, but I just don't like the aesthetic. So.
Sure, for sure. What about you, James?
My least favorite was probably the Seraphon.
Yeah.
It was just really disappointing.
It's out of place. It feels out of place.
It really
right?
does.
Yeah.
I mean, the Flesh Eater Courts was kind of a similar release, but at least for that, they kit bashed and released a combination of some quote unquote new models. I think they put the gold guy on the zombie dragon,
right,
or the Terrorgeist or something like that. So
and the fluff was so cool.
Yeah,
for
it was
Flesh Eater cards. That's probably one of the best bits of fluff they've
put out in
really
quite
a while.
Yeah, I think that's what helped the Flesh Eater Courts was the flesh. The fluff helped offset the lack of models.
Right. For me, I think it'd be with the Seraphon. It was just such a awkward step.
I don't see why it even came out. I don't see what the point was.
At least in that format, it was like an 8th edition, or it was like a Warhammer Fantasy Battles army book release, and nothing else has really felt like that so much.
Yeah, everything else has advanced the story in some way or moved it in a new way. That one just it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and I think they've touched on them a little bit here and there with the fluff, but they've kind of...
Well, yeah, in the latest one, with the Slan messing around with Scarbrand and all. But again, that was such a sidelight thing. It was whatever, they're doing this.
Yeah, so I would say that Seraphon, I feel you on the Fire Slayers thing too. Like, I love the Magmadroth. I think the Magmadroth is a really cool model, but there is something about the Fire Slayer look that's a little off.
You know what they remind me of is Chaos Dwarves. Is to me they would be Chaos Dwarves.
I think that was what they were going for. This is like the new Chaos-ish dwarves that will acknowledge exist as a company instead of kicking that out to Forge World. But I think that's kind of a good deal of their inspiration is a mix of Slayer / Chaos Dwarf. Yeah. But that's it. Well, okay. Now let's do what our favorite is. What do you think really crushed it for Age of Sigmar? What really stands out to you is like, damn, I didn't think it'd do that, and here it is. What about you, Bill?
Oh God, that's hard because I'm all about the new shiny.
Right.
But, I mean, I've got to give it over to Archeon and the Chaos armies. The Bloodbound that came with the basic set.
Oh, yeah.
Added to everything else that's in the range. You can go anywhere you want with it. And of course, Archeon is just beyond amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
That whole thing is just, wow.
I think the Bloodbound have kind of been overshadowed by now. They went up against the Stormcast. Yeah. You either liked the Stormcast or you didn't. And then, then came the Iron Jaws and the Sylvaneth. So it's kind of easy to forget that's an Age of Sigmar new release, and they are phenomenal sculpts. They look so good, and really gave Khorne some character and a nice, unique look on the table.
And that to me, that's the thing is they stand out amongst the crowd now.
Yeah, it's no more like blocks of Warriors of Chaos with like a red wash over their armor,
exactly,
or something. They just look like everything else, and you really got to put some time and conversion in to really separate your Khorne from your Nurgles and things like that. Kind of like what you, James, did with your old Chaos stuff. This stuff on the table is Khorne, and
you can't mistake it for anything else,
right? And I think we're gonna get a taste of that for the other stuff too. Like if you look at the Silver Tower and all the Tzeentch specific stuff in there, it looks really good. Great looking stuff. Yeah. So What about you, James? What do you think is the real standout release of this year?
The modeler and painter in me wants to say the Sylvanath. And the
Ilarial, or
yeah, well, no,
or just
actually,
in general?
I like the aesthetic of the army. I really like the
yeah.
tree reverence and the
Oh yeah, the little guys.
little guys. Those are actually
So
probably my
cool.
favorite out of the release.
Oh yeah.
After
fair
I saw
enough.
the artwork, I was like, these are pretty sweet. I mean, like I said, all the models in there are pretty good. I really like how they're combining the spirit aspect with the forest aspects, and that's like I said, from modeling standpoint, that's my favorite. From a gaming standpoint, it has to be the Extremist chapter.
Yeah, that. Oh man.
Yeah.
That dragon is really cool, and the Dracoth riders, certainly filled a niche for that army to give him some movement.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the prosecutors, but otherwise it was just like these big old paladin bros that were kind of hoofing it unless they had the banner, which kind of pigeonholed you into taking a banner every time to get your dudes around.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, wow, there's the Vexillor and paladins again.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's because my other option is to leave a bunch of liberators on the battle line and not really go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not even taking a teleport banner in my
Yeah.
list, so it just shows how big of an impact I think they have had.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, they gave that whole army movement that it didn't have.
Yeah. Well, it gave it resilient movement.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
the prosecutors are pretty fragile. Going around with 2 wounds and a 4-up, you could focus on them and bring them down pretty quick.
Easy. But now, how much different are the Vanguard versus the Dracothians?
Oh, I think the Dracothian Guard are way better than Varangard.
I think they look cooler.
The Varangard?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially, it's kind of a shame because the demon weapons, I think, are probably the weakest out of the three choices.
Yes.
But, man, they look so
They look
cool.
the best.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I think if I did a Varangard army, I would say screw it and just take the demon weapons anyways. They're sweet looking.
yeah, that's what really... one of the things that kills me is Vanguard are 3 in a box for $100. And then the Dracothians are granted 2 in a box, but they're only, 60?
They're like 66. They're the same point, or same
Oh,
same
yeah, they are the
value.
same cost.
Yeah,
aren't they?
you just
'Cause it's
get
2.
less on a box.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it all balances out.
Yeah, I just hate that $100 price tag.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but really, so yeah, 3 boxes of Varangard and Archeon sounds like a lot, but it's an army, kind of the same price tag as an old 8th edition. Actually, it's probably a little cheaper than an old 8th edition army, and you get Archeon and Varangard.
I think
Yeah,
it's way
pretty sweet.
cheaper, really. You're looking at what? 450?
Yeah,
So-
450. Yeah.
Plus, Vanguard are battle line units.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
take an ever-chosen list with Archeon and all Varangard, it's a battle line unit, so that makes that literally is an army.
Yes.
Whereas with the Dracothian Guard, there's no way to make them battle line, so that's nice. So for me, as far as what really stands out to me is, I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to dodge it or coming up with a cheesy answer or anything like that. But to me, not necessarily Age of Sigmar as a whole, which is, I absolutely enjoyed it. I think this is the most fun I've ever had playing a tabletop game has been Age of Sigmar. But it's the release schedule, the amount of just content that we have gotten in the last year, like I was saying earlier, with the number of books that we've gotten. For Games Workshop to take 30 years of a world and just can it.
Yeah.
It's done. We're moving on to something completely new. We'll reference here and there little tidbits, but for the most part, man, this is all completely new stuff. And I remember thinking, like, after I'd read Gates of Azir and, gone through that first big hardbound book that doesn't really have a title. It's just called Mighty Battles
In the Age of Sigmar.
in the Age of Sigmar. It was real vague with the fluff and everything, and a lot of people were sitting there like, oh man,
What is this?
Yeah, I don't know where this is going, and here we are. A year later, we've torn through the Realm Gate Wars. There's been a ton of audio content that's come out.
There's been so much stuff you can't even keep up with it.
Yeah, I've been trying to buy just the novels, the hardback novels that have come out, and I've had a hard time keeping up with that. I haven't even read the first one, but I want to have them all in my library ready to go when I finally get a chance to start cracking through the fluff. But it's all there. They've been, I think, doing a really solid job keeping up with it. Obviously, the individual battle tomes for the armies touch on how they relate to the story individually. So that's great. And then and the models themselves as a whole, I don't think there's, I know we talked about the Fire Slayers. I think that might be an aesthetic thing. Some people absolutely love the Fire Slayers and the way they look and everything.
Well,
but
they are gorgeous and all that stuff. To me, the aesthetic's not there.
Right. But other than that, I think, and obviously the Stormcasts are another one of those that are kind of divisive. Yeah. But I think the model ranges have just been knocking it out of the park. You look at the Iron Jaws, you look at the Sylvanath, just been the Bloodbound have been incredible. Some of the character models for the Bloodbound, just amazing, absolutely amazing. And then obviously Archeon and the Baron Guard. So I guess for me it really is kind of Age of Sigmar as a whole, and just what that huge leap of faith that they took as a company to recognize that, it's 30 years of a game and it's the most established. It is the most established fantasy world. I know a lot of people say, like Game of Thrones or even Lord of the Rings or stuff like that, but, Tolkien's dead. Goes, he's not writing anything new, and George R. Martin's following him quick. The old world just had so much fluff.
Yeah.
And for them to, that was a huge leap, and they have just barreled their way into what they have now, which I think is great stuff. Plus, you even got the terrain. Yeah. Look at the terrain that came out for Age of Sigmar is so cool and unique and everything. So,
and it also speaks to the whole change in focus for the entire company. In the past year, they have done quite literally a 180 on their forward face towards their community, towards the fans.
Yeah.
They've engaged with everybody. They've brought regular street people in to play test books and games. And literally it was 15 years ago when we saw this kind of engagement from the game.
Even a little bit like this.
And you can look across the board. Hell, read Daka Daka. You have to look to see the hate speak and all this stuff, and the pure vitriol that comes from the guys. That normally, it used to be anything they released was torn apart before it ever hit the shelves. Nowadays, people are looking forward to this stuff.
Well, I guess maybe that was a blessing in disguise. A lot of the haters and whatnot left.
Yeah,
and haven't really come back. I know the General's Handbook is kind of calling to some of them, and hopefully they'll transition back into it a little softer than what they were before. Yeah. I'm really hoping, because I'm hoping that when we do a year-end review of year 2 of Age of Sigmar, it's not everybody ripping point systems apart and net lists and that would
everyone's playing this list.
Yeah, that would suck if that's right back to where.
But I don't. I honestly don't think it will, because they did that whole a year of a different kind of playing, and like you said, they got rid of the people that always hated them but played their games anyway. They got rid of them.
Yeah,
they realized that those people were not where the money was coming from.
Exactly.
So
yeah, buying third-party models for everything, and then showing up to play a game that you can't stop hating.
Yeah.
Yet here you are.
Well, why are you here then?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that's kind of our year in review. It didn't really go in depth on a whole lot, but kind of glossed over.
Do you want to talk about how our community's grown in the last year?
Oh, absolutely. We kind of touched a little bit on that in episode 1. When Age of Sigmar dropped, it left a crater in its wake. And James, you and I were pretty much it. I know some of the guys kind of maybe threw a game in and we're like, no, I'm not feeling this. Granted, this was back when we just had the 4 pages.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of meet in the middle and grind it out, and nobody enjoys playing that kind of a game. So we didn't have comp systems and points and, the community stuff that came afterwards. So yeah, it was just the two of us, and we were persistent, and our good buddy Andrew, he decided he'd jump in on it with us because he'll follow me wherever, which is always nice. And then where there was 3, there
we
came
just
4, and
what we did was we just kept playing every week.
Yeah,
showing up to the game store, having some fun, making it look interesting for other people to watch. I mean, I know Ben Curry had a podcast a couple weeks ago about how to grow a community. Another tip I would have would be, if you are playing with someone, try to play with some painted armies. I know that goes a really long way.
Make it look as good as you can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and even play. We're fortunate enough where we can play on other nights where there are other miniature players playing, so get that crowd in. I mean, when we play on a Friday night, we'll have tons of people come by our table and look at it. I mean, they'll ask us questions. And that's the other thing. You got to take enough time to don't be in such a rush in your game, or plan enough time to just have other people come up and talk to you about it and talk to them about it.
There's some points you can make. I know, like, we get a lot of Magic players that'll come over and they'll look at it and be like, oh man, this game looks so cool. What do you do? And it's like, well, you measure stuff around and you roll dice, etc. And they're like, oh, but isn't this game really expensive? And you kind of hit them with the price, and there's the start collecting stuff. It's much easier to transition into Age of Sigmar than it ever was.
Oh yeah,
any previous edition. And when they're like, oh, like even $85 for a box of models, they kind of freak out. And it's like, do you understand how much money you spend on Magic cards that are literally going to be obsolete in 3 months because that's how your game is designed? Like, if you really want to talk about how much money we're throwing at a game, and the models that I have now will be usable 10 years from now, whereas the cards you just bought won't.
Will be rescinded.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that goes for really any card game, and anybody, any of the tabletop gamers kind of know what comes with the territory. Even the guys that play like X-Wing and stuff like that. I mean, that's a game you can dump a lot of cash into, and so you can kind of maybe draw some of those players in as it's a tabletop game like that and stuff. But with this one, you can kind of customize your stuff and paint it to how you want it to look like, and add your own little flavor to it and tell your own stories, as opposed to Star Wars is cool, but it's the same thing. It's always going to be your X-Wings and TIE fighters and whatnot. So,
and when you tire of that.
Yeah.
And we've been bringing in some of the 40K players too, I know.
Yeah,
they've at least been we've gotten a couple of them to join us, and there's even more of them looking at it.
Yeah, that I'd say that's one of the biggest surprises is how many of the 40K guys. I think it's the round bases, and because to be honest, it was that rank and flank aspect of the game that I think threw a lot. Well, not just 40K players, but a lot of people in general. I think that's maybe why War Machine was such a big deal too. Yeah. They had the more fluid movement and stuff like that. And I know trying to teach that Napoleonic-esque big block maneuvers and stuff to new people, they just look at it like,
what?
Well, why can't I attack the thing that's right next to me? Surely the guys will see that. Like, well, yeah, but it doesn't work that way. I know we touched on that earlier with my little rant about the saber tusk and stuff. And whereas this looks so much more fluid, it moves so much more fluid, it looks more dynamic.
Yes. That's the biggest thing, is it looks more engaging.
It's an eye catcher, and I think that's what has brought a lot of those 40K guys over. Plus,
and I guarantee you, it's the Sigmarines that brought
and demons.
Yeah,
oh well, I already have a demon army on rounds. You mean I can just try a game?
Yeah,
just bring in your army, and we'll go through it, and I'll show you how to play real quick.
Yeah, there's a couple of demon players on the 40K night that said they're gonna give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure,
because it's easy.
So.
But they had to. I think there's a reason that they're gold. Okay, so that they jump out at you.
Yeah, they're the real metallic gold and silver. Yeah, for sure.
Because they jump out at the 40K guys and go, Oh, I know that.
Yeah,
I can
they're
beat
not
that.
trying to hide that. I
Not at all.
don't think. That's definitely well. Wow,
It's a gateway drug.
man,
And
I
it
wish I
worked.
could remember what show I was listening to. It was an interview with Gav Thorpe,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about how the original the Space Marines are based off the original Warriors of Chaos from
Yep.
fantasy, and it's kind of a come full circle where the Stormcast Eternals are obviously based off of like Terminators
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So in essence, it's really returning back to its fantasy roots and those old amazing big beefy looking Warriors of Chaos guys that have been so iconic throughout all these years. This is kind of the good guy version of that. So
Yeah, and then with the General's Handbook, we've got even a couple more eyes looking at the game.
Oh yeah, and that's been a big one, calling back to a lot of those people, and even people who were interested, that would come by the tables maybe 4 months ago, and were like, "Well, how? I kind of heard about this game. There's like no points or anything. How does that make sense?" Like, well, yes, it doesn't have any points and whatnot, but we use like a community-made comp system. You can go to this website, and you could tell their interest started waning real quick.
right
like,
then.
well, I'd kind of want something that's not necessarily spoon-fed to me, but something that's more official than
Yeah, a little
than
bit more
what's made.
codified than
And,
that.
well, now they come around and are like, well, there's a book. You can
See
see
this?
it.
Yeah.
It's got all these points in it,
Mhm.
how to build an army, just like you do for the other games you're interested in or playing. And
Yeah, we even had that other guy. I forget where. I think he's here from Albuquerque, and he came by Friday to watch mine and Jeremy's game.
oh, the guy who was really interested in 8th edition.
Yeah, he wanted to play the dish, but we kind of talked him into at least giving AOS a
shot.
A shot. I mean, he looked at it. So he said it seemed like he might come by and play next week. So
Oh, right.
we'll
on.
see.
I hope so. So if you're listening to this and you're one of those people that's like, maybe podcasts are really the only Age of Sigmar you get because you live in an area where the game just doesn't really exist, or you had an 8th community that dropped off and have since moved on to other games. Be patient, be persistent, set up a night. A lot of these things Curry talked about in his show, or you just set up a night. Every Friday at 7:00 at Active Imagination is what we do, and in having that set means that when other people come in and on like a Tuesday night and they're just walking around doing laps on the floor, the product floor of the game shop, the guys at the shop can tell them, well, if you're interested in that game and want to see what it looks like, this is the night they play. And if you show up to your store, even if it's just you, show up with 2 different forces, anybody who's got any interest, show them. You just got to be patient, and it'll come. Don't go play another game that you're not going to enjoy.
Yeah.
You don't think you're going to enjoy, and spend a bunch of money on it because maybe one other person is playing that, and it's the flavor of the month. I got suckered into that stuff years ago, and I went through like a War Machine phase and a Spartan Games phase, and if it was a company that made models, and I played it, and you know what? All of that stuff collected dust. On the shelves, and Warhammer Fantasy and 40K were always there.
Mm-hmm.
So just be patient and be persistent.
Well, yeah. Even Curry said it took them 4 months before they got more than 4 people playing.
Yeah.
So,
and it took probably a good 4 or 5 months before it was just James and I that would show up and play. So
I think Curry said they have 20 people playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have as many people showing up on a club night as show up to like most
tournaments.
Tournaments, yeah. So, in the last, that Trials of Oatgear we ran had 8 people, and I feel like with the Rolling Bad Rumble coming up here in a month, that we'll probably get maybe even double that. A lot of the Colorado guys that dropped out are really interested because of the Player's Handbook, or General's Handbook. Yeah. So, it just shows you if you're patient and persistent and patient with the people who come ask questions about the game too.
Yes.
You gotta understand a lot of people are gonna just walk away from it. That's fine.
Yep.
But you still got to be engaging.
Exactly. The game itself revolves around getting along with other people, so
It's a social contract.
exactly. So I think that's really it.
Yeah.
I think we hit everything we wanted to talk about. Here we are a year into Age of Sigmar and doing a podcast and setting up tournaments. And
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, going to tournaments.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
I think we ought to tell people how to get a hold of us.
Sure. If you can't get enough of me, I'm at Elric Edge at Twitter. That's ELRIC. At Elric Edge, yes. ELRIC, EDGE, all one word. You can also hit us up on our Facebook page at Rolling Bad.
And you can get me at Bill Castello, CASTELLO, or at my blog or my YouTube channel, which will be in the show notes.
Or you can find me on Twitter at Tersoth, TERSOTH. You can always email us if you have any feedback at rollingbadpodcast@gmail.com, or we have a website, rollingbad.com. You can always find the episodes. We have info on the Rolling Bad Rumble up there.
Yeah.
If you guys want to come, please let us know so we can sign you up.
Yeah, you can also sign up at the website too if you want to.
And also we have a forum on the Grand Alliance community.
So
you
we have
can
our
go to the
own
podcast
individual
section there and you can drop a note in our forum. So
we also have a Twitter handle for the show itself at Rolling Bad, so you can get all of us there if you just send something directly to that feed.
So when next you hear from us, we'll be covering their adventures at the Slobberknocker GT.
We'll
Until
miss
then,
you, Bill.
I know, I hate this. I should just drive out there on Sunday for fun. But anyway, you'll hear us in 2 weeks. Take care, guys.
Let me think about that.
Why don't you shut your hole, Siri? Nobody cares what you have to say about anything.
She's going to tell you all about the orcs.
God. It's a race between you and me to see who loses a foot first. God. Bye!
All right, that was a great outro. So
I tried to hit the Gary Hennessy note.
Mhm.
Like,